Welcome to the Programmatic Digest, a podcast dedicated to reviewing industry trends and latest news in the programmatic and ad tech world. I'm Ellen Parker, your host and Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting, where we offer one-on-one coaching or a 6-month training and development program in programmatic media to fit you and your team's needs. So thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe right below and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Programmatic Digest podcast, everybody tuning in. Sara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing lovely. How are you?
I am very, very excited to have you. You're like my goal, like your goat. This we reached out, y'all. If you don't know yet, I came across an article Sara wrote about the cookie, how it all started, how this whole mess of cookie deprecation all started. And it took us back in 2015, 17, when I started with Apple, Firefox, and everything. And I used that content in the course, the reach and frequency course. And it's been great. Like, it's like, you've done all the research. And I was like, I'm just going to quote her everywhere. Here it is, you know? And then I reached out to you and you were like, yeah, let's do this. And I was like, this is so fucking awesome. Let's do it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Sara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, what gets you excited? Before we get into the episode, we're going to talk about how to prepare for the signal loss and why it's so important to look at environment, be it like a clean rooms or something like that. But in the meantime, I'd love for you to introduce yourself for those who don't know you yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Sara Polli. I'm a senior director of marketing technology at Hearts and Science. I've been here for 5.5 years.
Whoa,
before that, I know it's like OG agency style.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's like dog years. Like 1 year in programmatic is a dog year. I swear, I keep saying that. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and before that, I was at the Washington Post on their digital advertising team. So that's really where I got my start in the industry. Was on the publisher side, and it's a great place to start. Yeah, it's kind of at the end of the food chain of getting things live, but essentially what a media planner builds and sends to a publisher, I would traffic that creative that they sent over, QA it, make sure it was live on the website, get them screenshots, the whole 9 yards. And then as I grew through that, found the opportunity with Hearts to really work with a plethora of different vendors. And that's what really excites me is I kind of need to know about all of them in some shape, way, or form. I don't need to know them super in depth because that's why you ask questions and you have other team members. And so at Hearts, particularly the past couple of years, I've really focused in on the privacy changes that are happening, particularly right now with the browser cookie changes that happened with Apple. And then Apple decided, okay, I'm done with cookies. I'm going to go and take out the IDFA, the ID in the apps. So it's just, that's how we got to signal loss. Is everyone talked about cookie deprecation. Everyone's been talking about third-party cookies. It's like, hey guys, it's not the only signal that's going away. We're seeing signal loss happen across the board, and like we have to prepare for all of them in different ways.
Nice.
So, as part of that, I also sit on OMG Future Signals Task Force, where we've got one of us from all the different agencies, different backgrounds, and we do a quarterly presentation to clients to help them figure out, navigate the future signals. We dive deep into CTV. We dive deep into the Google announcements. We dove deep into IDFA when that was redacted. What did that look like? What were we seeing to CPMs? So really just giving our clients and internal folks across OMG access to education, help them. And then from there, we usually build out some kind of action plan. And so I'm really excited. We've kicked this off with all of the clients at Hearts, but built an action plan it's called Navigating the Future Signals, but very actionable, an audit and an assessment, and then a plan for how we're going to reach their users wherever they may be and continue to help build their business goals, all while being agile as industry announcements come. We all know last week that Google Chrome said, okay, we're going to push this to 2024. There was all sorts of memes and different feels on that.
Have you seen that one? It's on LinkedIn and on Instagram. It's like a GIF, I think, or it's like a 10-second video of like Google announcing it, and then you see like people in the office like just
From
saying,
Wolf of Wall
"Yeah,
Street with
yeah,
Leonardo
there's
DiCaprio.
the
Yeah.
Wall Street," and then you see like WPP dead too. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that is so freaking funny." I
Yeah.
can't I literally keep laughing and watching the thing over and over every time it comes through my timeline. Like I don't get tired of watching some of them too. But this is too much to entertain me too. So
It
when
is.
those
It
things,
is. It's
Okay, so I'm going to take the next 30 seconds to let you know about the reach frequency, which is a course you has asked me for, okay? And I've spent a lot of time crafting every single lesson just for you. Why should you even consider? And then I'm already pretty aware of what's going on in programmatic advertising. I love your podcast content. This is why I'm here. Cool, great. But you may know somebody that really wants to learn about programmatic advertising and don't know where to start, right? Most likely you've received training via your current job or via a previous job, right? You work for an agency, you work for a partner, a vendor in the industry, and they provided the training, right? Is that how you got here? Well, did you know that that's actually the only way to get training nowadays? Like if for any one of our friends in the digital marketing world, it's really hard for them to really learn anything if they don't know who, where, and really what to look for. So the reach and frequency course is geared for those people. It's going to take you from 0 to 100, from fundamentals to how to run a successful programmatic media campaign, how to run a successful department if you wish to be a leader or lead a department in programmatic advertising. The reach and frequency course is for you. Okay, we talk about anything from fundamentals. We talk about anything from who are the key players in the industry. But the biggest thing is that I give you my recommendation, my feedback, my guides. I was a trader. I was a buyer for 8+ years, right? And I led teams of buyers. So I'm really, really, really good when it comes to running a programmatic advertising strategy, implementing, executing, optimizing, and reporting on, and then selling some more. So I'm really good at that. So yeah, you can probably get most of this training out there. Great. Don't only stop with my course, continue training, because that's what it's all about, right? But what you won't get anywhere else and you'll get with me is all of that experience I've been able to gather, you've been able to implement. Like this is an interactive course for you to learn anything you should know about programmatic advertising, whether you're already working in it or you're trying to work in the industry. So check out the Reach and Frequency course brought to you by me, your very own programmatic coach. I'm very grateful for this experience that I've gone through the last 2 years, and I'm here to teach you everything that I know. Check out Reach and Frequency live, reachandfrequency.live. And now back to the episode.
yeah, I think I had dual feelings when that came out.
oh, girl.
No one's surprised. We'll
Yeah,
just get off
we're
the
not
table.
surprised. I
There's no surprise.
honestly don't think, and then we're moving into the conversation right now, but I don't think that's gonna ever happen at this point. And if it does, it's not going to be. I feel like they're just gonna shave off a few things of the
Mm,
was allowed in the cookies, but there's still going to be some level of targeting of the cookies that we'll be able to access. Like some level of the information will still be there, but it might not be the traditional cookies anymore. What do you think? What do you think about that? Based on
yeah,
tell
I
me the
think
truth. Is it crazy to think like that? Or is it like,
no.
still
Some people are
preparing?
like, "This is never gonna happen."
I'm still preparing though.
I think, oh yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
be prepared. Like the Boy Scout, Girl Scout motto is always be prepared. I think it will happen eventually.
Okay.
Third-party cookies will just go away.
Mhm.
The timing for Chrome, I mean, I'm not a betting woman, and I don't think anybody could really guess. There's a lot of factors
Oh my
that
gosh.
go into this.
Mhm.
All the different privacy laws and regulations, not just in the US states, but
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah.
And they're all slightly different. And Chrome is a global product. They have to meet different expectations.
Yeah,
They
you're
made
right.
that commitment with CMA in the UK, but that's just the UK. And so I think that complicates it a bit.
Mhm.
How does it work with all of the different privacy regulations that are coming out and coming out of the woodworks? And there's US proposal of no contextual targeting or no behavioral targeting, but like what does that actually mean? How is that going to be possible? What does that mean for their product? Google's not taking the Apple way of it, of just ripping the Band-Aid off and like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, can you just do it? Like, we'll
Let's
just move
get
it. We'll figure
over.
it out. We figured it out with Apple. We'll figure it out. We'll figure something out. It'll be something.
Yeah.
But I understand that, it's a massive company. They touch both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
There's also the DOJ lawsuit and such going on with Google. Like, is it going to get broken up? They gave that offer of like taking out Google ads or something. And then the team was like, no, that's not enough as a consolation prize. So I think there's a lot of external factors that play into their timing.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we do get to see the sandbox APIs actually come out next year for advertising use cases.
Okay.
So something I like to remind our teams and also our clients is, the Privacy Sandbox website gives you a timeline and it says its topics API has started. It has, but that doesn't mean it has for our use cases in our world. So when you think about the ecosystem, the DSPs have to adopt that technology and start to absorb those signals and make sense of those signals before we can even bid on those signals.
You're right.
So there's a bit of a layering that kind of has to happen before we can actually get to, okay, how does it compare to cookies today? How is it comparing to us bidding on an ID such as the ramp ID?
Got it.
There are also very different things. You're going against many versus one. So, a bit of a pineapples and watermelon scenario, if you want to call it that. But I hope we get better insights and that gives us time to make better recommendations for clients when it comes to their buying platforms. But who knows? I think it's a wait and see.
It's like really a good perspective that you're sharing, because indeed, like when for a trader, for somebody on the activation side, like myself, I offer consulting. I'm focusing on training folks in programmatic activation, my expertise in media buy. And now what we're starting doing, what I'm really excited about, is just helping that talent get placed somewhere. And one of the biggest things during our training is like, how do you get prepared for cookieless? And right now it's very conceptual. And then some DSPs don't offer a lot of visibility. I mean, I work with a really big and robust DSP, one of the leading ones, and they're not able to go down to even reporting. What's the difference in the segment? How much of this is ID solution? How much of it is third party still? And it's like crazy. So as they're pushing that deadline, I'm just like, well, DSPs can't even catch up to it yet. So, it would be nice to be able to identify how much of that percentage is ID solution, ID, or third party. But I understand, like, I think you're reminding folks that, there's actually there's a lot of shit going on the back end. We just got to remember that this is just the the top. I think of it as like the iceberg in the water. People just like the whole shit is at the bottom. So like we gotta remember that iceberg at the bottom within the water. Which I really love for you to maybe refresh our mind, for the listener and myself, about like what do the industry define as like a signal or a signal lost? Because I think we are so good at just coming up with new terms in our programmatic space and then using those terms interchangeably and confusing the F out of everybody else. So talk to me about like what we should understand when we talk about signals and signal loss, and then let's move into like preparation.
Yeah. So a signal cookies, third-party cookies have been the backbone of digital advertising since it came about in 1996, and they haven't changed. But our behavior, our devices, everything has changed. So if you think about back in 1996, and you see a small percentage of US, we'll just keep a focus on the US. I think the stat was like a single-digit percent of US households had a computer. And you had one computer, probably one browser, Internet Explorer, maybe Safari if you had a Mac. And it was just one. That was it.
And
then we got
dialed up. So the struggle was
real. Dial up. Yep. So it was like a one-to-one. It was very like simple. And the cookie was built for like someone added this to their cart so that the business knew. Like that was the kind of original, like basic
Yeah.
use case.
Mhm.
And as digital grew and as consumer behavior changed, we have multiple screens. I have a Fire tablet. I have a work computer. I had a work phone. I have a personal phone.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot of different things
Yeah.
on all of them. And sometimes I start seeing something somewhere and then I finish it over here on this device.
Mhm.
Now I have a bajillion cookies
Mm.
and it's like, whoa, what is going on? And people realized this is a solid signal
Yeah.
for us to reach consumers,
Yeah.
to sell more things and meet them where they are. And so it just blew up massively. And we've all, the industry has been super successful. And then Apple came and said, we want to believe in privacy. And that's
Not today.
when,
You hear
yeah,
that?
that's
Not today.
when they came and was like, the third party cookie probably isn't privacy safe. And that's where the ball got rolling. So
Yeah.
I would say that third party cookie is like the initial signal.
Mhm.
But then we also went to other things. We got apps. So then you have an IDFA or an ADID. So that's another signal. Signal is just something that we can get to use. It could be a contextual signal too. I mean, we've got great improvements in AI and machine learning to help improve contextual targeting. And initially, a lot of it was like, oh, for brand safety, we don't want to run against these things. But now we can get pretty smart and be like, okay, around these topics,
Mhm.
we want our brands and our advertising to be there, which helps publishers. And it's
Yeah.
not so much a black and white situation. So really a signal is kind of anything we can use. Email, hashed, no PII, cookie, first party cookie, such as analytics.
Mhm. Mhm.
With CTV coming, there's more signals there. And what was the other one I was gonna say? Oh, it's blinking, but so many different things. Search came about, social apps came about. And so
Gotcha.
there's like all this information. You've got IP address, which is probably the next key
Makes sense.
signal that is going to kind of go away. So while it's very easy for everyone to say, oh, third-party deprecation, and we saw this a lot with our clients, there's a lot of that just covering everything. And it's like,
Oh, makes sense.
but cookies are in a web browser.
Yeah.
That's one environment. And so we decided to kind of branch out to say, okay, signal loss, future signals, and looking at it more holistically because third-party cookies live here in a browser, but IDFA lives in your app on your iPhone.
Got it.
Those are two very different things.
So like a signal can be identified as like a on like a digital touch point.
Yeah.
Like literally everywhere you're touching and the interweb, like you're making a signal, you're creating a
Yeah.
signal,
Yeah.
and that touch point is what we are referring as signals. So now you're giving us the perspective that yeah, cookie deprecation is a big deal, but there's
Mhm.
actually a lot more. So talk to us
Mhm.
about you just talked about some of the challenges with Apple. Thank you. So how can here's $1 million
How do you
question.
start?
Where do we start with this whole mess?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah,
we
it's a great question. And so I've built a framework for the agency for our clients.
Mhm.
And like, what do we do? And key thing is, where's your media running
Mm,
and in what environment? So let's take Hulu as an example.
okay.
I can watch Hulu on the Hulu app on my phone, on
Phone,
iOS.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I can also watch it on my Samsung CTV.
Okay.
I can also watch Hulu on a browser on my laptop computer.
Yep.
So I have access to this in 3 different environments, and the signals vary in all of those different environments.
Mhm.
So Hulu app for iOS, if
Mm.
they choose to ask if I want my to be tracked, I say yes or no. That's if or not, we get the IDFA. On CTV, probably use my IP address.
Okay.
And on the web browser, they're going to use cookies. So you got to start to break it down by environment. And then we get to another level of really the internet is going to become even more 2 worlds. The authenticated world, the logged in world, signed in world. We know
Yeah.
who the person
Yeah.
is. and then the unauthenticated space, which will
Yeah.
most likely be the biggest portion.
Right. Right.
In unauthenticated and authenticated, then you also have those environments underneath it. And then
Mhm.
you have the different marketing platforms and publishers. So some publishers, you can be unauthenticated and authenticated if
Mhm.
you've reached that limit of number of articles to read.
Right. Oh, that's another conversation. I have a
Layers.
love-hate. Yeah, I have a love-hate situation with those like those articles, but then again, I should just invest because I support the
Yes.
company, you know?
Yes. And for journalism and
You
everything
know,
else.
for journalism, yeah. But anyway, that's so interesting. Okay, so the best way, if I had to recap this, and like, let's say if somebody had to stop the podcast now, even though there's more juicy stuff coming up, it would be really understanding where everything is running. And
Yeah.
sometime I think there might be limitation because like tracking and measurement might
Mhm.
be one of those things as well. But really identifying where what the environment is and identifying how things are measured or at least sourced, right? How this touch point is
Mhm.
coming up
Mhm.
is the best way to get started. Now, once we identified that, how do you answer that question of measurement and attribution?
I'm Ellen Parker. What if I tell you for $75 a month, you get to join a community with other fellow programmatic ninjas, successful ones that are looking to grow, ones that are looking to share what they know and learn from others? Would you be interested? And I get to coach you through your transformation, coach you through the skill set that you need to know in order to get what you want to get. Either is that raise, either is that promotion, either is even like a different job, right? So I'm not a recruiter, y'all. I'm not a recruiter. I'm one of you. I've done what you've been doing for at least 10 years, and I'm here to help you. And in the midst of things, some of my friends from the Programmatic Digest podcast, some of those guest hosts get to come. How many times have you listened to any other podcast and say, dang, I wish they could elaborate on this or I could ask this? Well, you get a chance to do that in the community. Just for $75 a month, we meet weekly, we grow weekly, we learn weekly, we share authentically, just being ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, try the first call on me, DM me, send me information, head over to the programmaticmeetup.com. I know you'll be able to find it anyway. So see you next Friday.
That's a really hard one. So the
Yeah.
industry, from my perspective, has focused a lot on targeting, finding
Yeah.
targeting solutions.
Yeah.
Like, we be able to target these people. So we've got
Yeah.
all these open web identifiers: Ramp ID, UID2, ID Fusion, ID5. I mean, I think I've heard there's like over 80 across the world. There's so many of them. Fabric ID from Newstar. And so that's like really what the focus has been on. And that's to get back to the one-on-one.
Mhm.
Well, that works if there's some kind of identifier to match
Yeah.
to. So essentially an email is going to be probably our strongest signal. So
Mhm.
someone needs to be logged in. Okay, well, that's a piece of the pie.
Mm.
Works great for Facebook, works great for Hulu, works great probably for major publishers that have different paywall levels. Doesn't work great if I'm just Googling something and reading an article.
Mm-mm.
And so that's where the contextual will come in.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been so focused on targeting
Yeah.
and we haven't really talked about measurement. And I've brought this up in a couple different industry scenarios.
Mhm.
And we got to be able to measure this stuff.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if we can't attribute it to paid media, and then the client can attribute that to sales, essentially that revenue and that money is at risk. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the approach I
ROI.
took. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
no, this is a business impact. This isn't like a paid media thing. Like, this
Mhm.
is much larger than, spending $20 million on Facebook.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a hard one because there is an investment that needs to be done.
Mhm.
That is not proving ROI right away because we live in this instant gratification world where everything needs to be not only like proved, but how can we make it better? How is things activating? And so sometimes measurement is one of those things that like, oh yeah, we can just report on it via the DSP. And it's
Yeah.
limiting because like you said, it's not only like your programmatic buy, it's like the marketing. And when I do, and again, when I do some of the trainings, they always ask like, oh, how do you know which strategy to come up with, which audience to come up with? And I'm always like, well, what are you trying to do? Like, what
Yes.
are we trying to do? Oh, we're just trying to have a CPA on the $12. But what is that going to do from a business
Yes.
perspective? Like if you're trying to sell cars, you can't really sell cars on your website unless you're Carvana. But if you're like a local dealership, like you're maybe just looking for, finish like sell those cars, those amount of cars, whatever it is for the month. But for us, from programmatic and marketing perspective, at least online, how can those people can find out more information online? What type of messaging? Again, going back to the environment, where are they spending the most time?
Mhm.
Once you figure it out where they're spending the most time, that's how you're going to be able to implement the measurement. And again, measurement can be as something such as tracking all the way through. But
Mhm.
then where does the, privacy consent, unconsented measurement, where's that line? And I think I don't know.
Yeah.
Like when somebody tells me like we're gonna figure it out together. Okay. And then we're gonna ask other experts to help us out here.
Yes.
But where's that blurted line? How do you make sure that how do we make sure that we fix, okay, like it's just opening a bottle, but at the same time still remain consented.
Yeah. So in the US,
Mhm.
there are 5, potentially 6
Okay.
privacy laws that are coming next year.
Oh
We
boy.
still are taking
But
a
down on this.
opt-out approach.
Okay.
So in GDPR in the EU and the UK, you have to opt in. You
Mhm.
have to give that consent to be tracked.
Yeah.
So essentially everything got wiped to zero
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
then you started from scratch.
Mhm.
Currently in the US, everything is opting out,
Like you have
which
to
is a lot of work on the consumer side. Most people haven't done it. I tried when the CCPA first came out.
yeah.
I wrote a blog post about it. It is a lot of work. And I stopped after like 10 sites because I was like, I have to do this for every single website I visit,
Oh
every single
wow.
website.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then going into Facebook and you can click the different categories and
Gosh.
it's like 4 or 5 clicks to like get at it. And I was like, I don't care enough
Yeah.
to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So when it comes to privacy laws, I think until we shift to that opt-in society, there's impacts, but I don't think it'll be massive at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, Losing the various signals is what really has impacted measurement and attribution.
Yeah.
So IDFA was how you matched for iOS. If
Mm.
somebody doesn't say yes to the client's app and yes to say the Peloton app, we can't do in-app attribution.
Yeah. Yeah. That sucks.
So that's a very much of an opt-in example.
You
And so for measurement, it's like, all right, what are we measuring? How
mm,
are we measuring? Like, what are we using to measure? Okay. For search, we're using floodlights. Okay. That's going to be fine. We'll check that box.
yeah.
Facebook, we're using the Facebook pixel.
Mhm.
Not fine. That's not going to be able to work in the future. What's the solution? Facebook and the social apps have come out with conversion APIs, which is essentially a way to safely send data from one endpoint to another.
Mm.
You could use your tag manager to do it. You could use a cloud service. There's like 7 different possibilities to do it.
Okay. Mhm.
And so then we start to kind of break down, okay, that's a focus. That's a priority.
Okay.
We need to get that done to ensure that.
Mhm.
And you kind of have to kind of go environment, publisher, and you kind of have to get really in the weeds. And that's what the teams are doing at Hearts now. You're like really opening up the hood and like really getting deep into where and what. And so then we start to see, okay, where are our measurement gaps?
Mm.
MMM is not going to be impacted. Probably a North Star, continue with that. MTA, I'm sure you've seen articles, headlines, people are like, MTA is dead. It's not dead, it's evolving. And it's like, what is the data source to power that MTA? And so a lot of MTA is powered today by the Google data transfer files, the log files. It's got all the raw data. We
Mhm.
can run all different types of queries and such on it.
Yeah.
Well, those log files are going away. They've also been said to be going away since 2018, but that'll go when cookies go, is what
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
officially
Yeah.
said. So that one's still, this is still kicking.
And I want to briefly refresh everyone's mind. MTA stands for multi-touch attribution. And
Yes.
then what was the first one you said?
MMM,
Which is
model,
uh, yeah.
marketing mix modeling.
Okay. Okay. Mixed modeling. And so briefly again for the listener.
I know we have
Define-
so many acronyms.
right? Like what is the
Crazy.
difference between the two? What is the biggest difference between MMM and then multi-touch attribution?
Multi-touch attribution is more of like, it could be based on the last click, it's more real time,
Mhm.
more actionable. MMM is a much longer view into the measurement. And it also includes not just digital many times, like they'll bring
Gotcha.
in radio, they'll bring in linear TV, and it's a more of a holistic picture. We're trying to find ways to tie digital to linear,
Mm.
um, with different tech partners so that the MTA has other channels in it.
Yeah.
But it
Mhm.
originally kind of was mostly on digital and last click to give the attribution for wherever the user saw the ad last, clicked on it, that kind of got it.
Got it.
But MTA lets us kind of see more of the journey,
Uh-huh.
and you can actually give different parts of the journey credit.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's what most, again, from a DSP perspective, from a buy side perspective, that's where most DSP have a MTA
Mhm.
option. A
Yeah,
MMM option is more you have to bring in an external partner to help you really
yeah,
identify place and stuff like
yeah,
that. Got
yeah.
it. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense for sure. All right. So before we go into the closing segment, what would be your 30-second recommendation to somebody that's just listening to the podcast and be like, yo, I can't even like how, who, and when? What is one thing you want them, one actionable insight that they could probably implement like today or tomorrow? Like, what's that one thing you can leave us with?
Mm. I would say ask questions. It's
Uh-huh.
constantly changing.
Yeah. Hmm.
My entire role and the folks on the team, like
Yeah.
we keep a pulse on the industry. Like we're focused on
Yeah.
like, oh, Apple said today that there's roles, they might build a DSP. Okay. Google announced this, so and so said this. We
Uh-huh.
may not know how all the pieces come together,
Yeah.
but we're like, okay, noted, that came out, noted, that came out.
Mhm.
So being intellectually curious and open-minded, Ad Exchanger, I think, is a great source to kind
Yeah,
of
like at
see
Exchanger.
on the polls. They are coming out with Ad, Ex, Ad Explained, I think, is their new column.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of to break everything down.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
gets so
real.
complicated so fast.
Yeah.
So and that's a free resource for
Yeah.
everybody. Yes, you have to give them your email to read more than one thing, but it's a free resource. And so that is what I recommend to a lot of people that ask me, like,
Yeah.
how do you keep up with all of this?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
like, Ad Exchanger and ask questions and don't be afraid to ask questions
Yeah.
because it does change so quickly
Mhm.
and things are changing so quickly that even as an expert that literally follows this for 2 years and I'm like in the way over my head of information, there are times where someone asks me something like,
Ugh, like it's
great question.
yeah,
Didn't even think of that scenario.
it's one of those things like, wow, okay, cool. What is your definition of programmatic advertising, like our space? If you had to explain to my 7-year-old niece Amina what programmatic advertising is, how would you tell her? How would you explain what programmatic is to her?
Yeah. It's funny whenever I write POVs or tell someone to write a deck, I'm like, you're explaining this to your grandmother.
Yeah.
That's
Gotta
just the
explain it to
goal.
Amina,
And it's like, oh, how do I do this?
yeah.
So programmatic advertising to a 7-year-old.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's a tough one, yeah, I have to admit.
I mean, I would say like the ads on the website, but
Mhm.
I don't think they know what those are.
So, there is a good point that you're bringing up, right? Because a 7-year-old, like, in 1989 or, like, 10 years ago is different than a 7-year-old now. Like, I was born in 1989, and I feel like the 7-year-olds now are so much more fucking smarter than us. At
Yeah.
least, we have, like, we have different perspective on life, but, like, my nieces, the way they talk, the way they just carry themselves, they're, like, already have a computer because they work well, post-pandemic, they're working with a computer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I would explain that, yeah, the ads online are what we control, and we're able to purchase and decide who's showing up and who's not showing up. But it is
Yeah,
a
and
really
like an
tough question.
automated
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, I
really
mean, I when I was at the Washington Post, there people
uh
are, family and folks not in the industry, they're like,
What do you do?
I mean, I still get that question, even from best friends. They're like, I have no idea what you do. And I'm like, you know the ads on the website? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I put them there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Like that was the end of the explanation. So we could say we run the computers
Yeah.
that put them there.
We do fund most of the internet, and I say that with a lot of confidence. We do fund most of the internet, people.
That is so important. As much as people, the
Hate
average
Uh-huh.
person or whomever is like, oh, I don't want advertising. I don't want targeting. I don't want behavioral, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, but let's think about the flip side of this. So we have that privacy law in the US that says no behavioral targeting.
Mhm.
Well, now when you look for that pair of shoes at Nordstrom and you bought said pair of shoes, it's still going to pop up because we have no way of knowing that that action took place. And so I'm a little, while I believe there's a lot of innovation and it is the right thing to do industry-wise, privacy-wise, I think it's going to be a little bit of a shakeup for consumers. The experience when this first initially happened, because and be like, wait, what? I already saw that. And we've seen the backlash on Reels on IG. So
it's one, oh my gosh, that's another.
I mean, we're at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves we're consumers. We're consumers. We see this ourselves. We know it, we recognize it in different ways. And I challenge the industry and all of us in the sense is like, is this really going to help the consumer experience? Are we going to make it better? How do we make it better so we aren't as annoyed? And we are willing to have that value exchange with a publisher or a brand one-to-one so that I can get my interests met. And then they are also effectively spending their money.
And honestly, if we got to take it back, that's why cookies was very first even created. Those cookies.
Exactly.
Consumers experience. It was for the user's experience. We just abused the shit out of it, but from an advertising perspective. But it was a user. It was for the user. So thank you so much for dropping so many gems.
Thank you so much for having me.
I still have so many more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time, and we'll have you back on a different topic very, very soon. So if anybody had additional questions, how can they reach you anywhere? Like, how can they get to you?
Yeah, they can send me a message on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Sara Polli, Polli. There's not many of us, one or two others, but there is only one at Hearts and Science. So message me. And if you are a brand that's like, hey, I could use help preparing and guidance, please let me know.
Definitely.
Happy to assist in that as well.
That is so great. And Sara's information will be in the show notes at the bottom of either this YouTube video or this podcast. So thank you again for dropping by.
Thank you.